Lecture 11, Aggregate Planning and Master Scheduling. Aggregate planning is the intermediate range capacity planning that typically covers 2 to 18 months. It's useful for organizations that experience seasonal or other variations in demand, and the goal is to achieve a production plan that will effectively utilize the organization's resources to satisfy demand. So here's sort of the planning sequence. So you start over here with corporate strategies and policies. You take a look at the economic, competitive, and political conditions. You aggregate demand forecasts. That all goes into your business plan, where you establish operations and capacity strategies. From there, that goes into the aggregate plan. This establishes operations capacity. And then the master schedule establishes schedules for specific products. Here's the inputs that go into the aggregate planning. First, you have resources. What are your workforce production rates? What are your facilities and equipment? And what's your demand forecast? And this is over specific units, like what's your monthly demand or weekly demand, depending on what time horizon you're using and the units. Policies. What policies do you have for workforce changes? Do you have a policy that you lay off people and then hire new people? Or do you have a policy of keeping a fairly stable workforce? What about subcontracting? Do you bring in subcontractors? Do you subcontract for part of your work? What about overtime? When you have excess demand, do you routinely have overtime? Inventory levels. How much room do you have for inventory? How much are you willing to let the inventory go up and down? And what about back orders? How bad is it if someone orders something that's not available, it's on back order? And then cost. What's the cost of carrying inventory? What's the cost of back orders? What's the cost of hiring and firing? What's the cost of overtime, inventory changes, and subcontracting? Cumulative graph. So here you have the cumulative output and the cumulative demand. So here's the periods, and here's what your output is, and here's your cumulative demand. So you see right here where your demand is less than you're producing, so you're creating a surplus here. And then right here you have a crossover point where the demand actually exceeds the production. This isn't a problem because back here you can, as long as you can store this, you can apply this inventory up here. Time fences. So here you have periods. The periods could be weeks, months. The first 3 periods are what's considered frozen, firmed, or fixed. You have plans and you're going to stick with those plans. The next 2 periods are somewhat slushy or somewhat firm. You have tentative plans there. And then periods 6, 7, 8, and 9, that's liquid or open. You're very flexible on what's done out in those periods. Here's a master scheduling process. You begin with inputs on the left-hand side. So you need your beginning inventory, your forecast, and your customer orders. So what do you forecast orders to be? What do you know the orders are, and what's in the inventory? You do master scheduling, figuring out what you're going to make when. And then out of that output, you're going to have projected inventory, a master production schedule, and then uncommitted inventory. So that uncommitted inventory really goes to the forecast. So here's a summary. We've talked about aggregate planning, the planning sequence, time schedules, and then master scheduling.